Why won't the FGC grow? I've seen variations of this question get passed around every so often. Things to the effect of like, is 2XKO gonna save the FGC? You know, why doesn't the FGC get as much viewership as some other genres, etc.? And every time the topic comes up, I always take an interest in it because, you know, I have a marketing background. So I think it is an interesting topic to talk about growth of the FGC. I feel like what people are looking for whenever this topic comes up is some sort of burst, some big wave of excitement that's going to come about whenever a new title gets released. I think in this new age where people sort of look to a website like Twitch as an indicator of what's popular at any given moment, there is a sense that there could be a game that comes along and generates so much excitement that it rockets, you know, the genre all the way up to people's attention, because that's frankly just the pattern that they're used to seeing, right? League of Legends comes out, new genre, super interesting. MOBAs take over for a good while. Fortnite sort of refines this battle royale genre that had been cooking for a little while. Totally new genre for people. Tons of excitement. Big boost of viewership. Dota Auto Chess comes out, new genre, Teamfight Tactics refines it, new auto battler thing, huge wave of excitement and attention, right? This is just the pattern that people have gotten used to. So they're sort of looking for like, what is this game that's going to come out that's going to bring our community out to the forefront of our attention? And I think what's important to note about each of these is that when these things pop off, they're very new and very fresh to that big audience of people. I say that they're new genres, but really the games that were catalysts for this sort of thing were not on the ground floor inventing these genres. League of Legends didn't invent MOBAs. Dota didn't even invent MOBAs. I believe it was a mod for the original StarCraft called like Aeon of the Storms or something like that. Dota iterated upon some of those ideas, and then League of Legends refined some of those ideas even further. Again, Teamfight Tactics did not invent this auto battling genre. You know, Dota Auto Chess was on the ground floor of that. Fortnite did not invent battle royales. PUBG didn't even invent battle royales. Battle royale was a mode that was like an Arma 2 mod, I believe, or maybe it was Arma 3. I don't know. One of the fucking Armas. It was a mod for Arma, right? And so if there was going to be a game that came around and popped off and got a ton of people's attention, basically it would be such an iteration upon what fighting games already are that it would no longer appeal, I don't think, to the people that currently like fighting games as they exist right now. There have been a number of efforts from multiple different developers over the years to try to simplify or refine systems within fighting games to try to get them to appeal to a wider market. And usually the end result is either that the wider market is a little bit more accepting. You know, I'm not going to say it doesn't help out at all, but usually the existing fan base is either middling on the changes or actively dislikes them, right? And I think even, you know, historically, there have been instances where there were big shifts in fighting game design to attract a wider market. The big one that comes to mind is Smash Brothers, right? And even with Smash Brothers, it's so different. It appeals to such a different demographic that we sort of, you know, subjugate it over to its own platform fighter subgenre that many people within the fighting game community don't even consider to be a fighting game. They like joke and jab at it and say it's a party game or whatever. Obviously, it's a fighting game. That's not even debatable in my mind. But, you know, I don't think it gets the same respect, and I don't think it has the same appeal to the same market that more traditional fighting games do, right? I think if you're looking for this big surge and wave of new participation and cultural relevance, I think, honestly, we've already had that. Like, I'm a little bit too young. I wasn't really there on the ground floor for any of this. I'm an 09er, as they say. But you know, back in the days when Street Fighter 2 was popping off and when Mortal Kombat was starting to come out, those things were like really big cultural moments. Like those started conversations not just within the video game industry or within video game players, but all across society, you know, especially in Mortal Kombat. But, you know, Street Fighter 2, I think at that time, the idea of being competitive within a video game was still relatively new to people. And I think adding that along with the fact that you had to like go to an arcade and you had to invest a little bit of money to even be able to practice, that it was a very social experience. You were interacting with other people face to face. That sense of identity that you had, both with like, you know, the arcade and the local scene that you belonged to, but also the sense of identity with like, you know, I'm a Fei Long player or I'm a Blanca player or whatever. That was like pretty new to people. And I think that was a massive cultural moment that, unfortunately I wasn't a part of. I didn't get to experience. But now we're sort of living in the aftermath of all of that. And I think that when we're looking at it through that lens, we can try to compare ourselves to the other genres that have sort of come and gone. And I think that we have a lot to be proud of. Like, I think of, when Twitch first was coming out, the most popular game on the platform at that time was StarCraft 2. StarCraft was massive overseas in like Korea and some other Asian regions. And it was just an incredibly competitive and very popular game. And when StarCraft 2 came out, it sort of gave it an international presence and had a lot of like national pride and competitions and whatnot. And people were able to like see it firsthand and live, often for like the first time. It was able to see people training on their own independently and streaming their own like ladder experience for the first time. And that was, a really big cultural moment. Where are strategy games today? I don't know. I mean, arguably, we haven't seen another great strategy game since StarCraft 2 came out. I think, there are a couple of people who are working on that right now, trying to develop new games like Stormgate and whatnot. And there has also been scenes, for Age of Empires, largely retro Age of Empires games. So I don't want to totally disregard the strategy game community. But I think it would be fair to say that it is middling, and that a lot of those players that were interested in that type of isometric strategy game have moved on to MOBAs, which kind of replicate that, but in more of a team environment, right? When it comes to MOBAs, I do think that they are still incredibly culturally relevant and still very, very popular. But if I'm looking at trends, I do feel like they're kind of on the down curve or on their way out. I feel like there are less and less people that are interested in picking up and learning games like League of Legends or Dota 2 every single day. And I don't think I sense the possibility for new titles to sort of emerge and take people's attention. I do think we'll start to see things like Smite 2 replacing Smite and, modernizing the existing titles that we already have. But I don't think there's going to suddenly be like a new MOBA that comes out and really shakes up people and gets them excited for the genre again. I think people like what they already like, and it's going to be very difficult to convince them to relearn an entirely new MOBA with an entirely new set of characters again. I think people are kind of where they're going to be. And when I look at the FGC in comparison, I think it's really worth noting and talking about that it has pretty steadily and consistently grown ever since, I guess, like almost ever, right? Like, sure, maybe it doesn't have the cultural relevance that it did back when Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat and all of that stuff was still new and fresh to people. But I think it's undeniable that, like, the tournament presence, the number of people that are showing up, the, amount of money that is invested, the amount of eyes and attention that are on the genre, regularly, not just in this moment, like in the conversation, but like literally tuning in to watch tournaments and talk about, the performance of players and whatnot. I think that's all higher than it's ever been. And I think part of that strength, part of what's able to make this community so stable and so sturdy is the fact that it is the fighting game community and not the Street Fighter community or the Mortal Kombat community or the Tekken community. You understand what I'm saying? The fact that at any given moment, if a game comes out and we just happen to not like it, then the people that don't like it can just play a different fighting game, and it's totally fine. Because any tournament that you go to is going to have like 8 different games at least represented, right? When your community is based around a single game, you run the risk of having a shitty patch or having a shitty meta for a time and just sort of being stuck with it and needing to sort of power through it. Whereas, if you're a community based around a genre like we are, then you're able to just shift around and just stick to playing whatever new releases excite you the most. I do think, however, in modern times, the communities do face unique issues that are born of innovations within the genre. Mainly, the fact that rollback is so ubiquitous now, I think has made it really, really difficult to convince people to come out to local events anymore. And I think my proposal, and I don't want to take credit for this, I did see somebody on Twitter talking about this, and I think it's an excellent idea. But I think we just have to reframe the way that we have traditionally done locals. Locals traditionally have been basically weekly tournaments, or however frequently you can do it. So you say, hey, people in this city, if you want to come out, we're going to be playing every Friday night at da-da-da's, come out to da-da-da's. There's a $5 entry fee, and then there's a $5 bracket fee. We're going to play in a tournament. I hope you come out. And that is cool. I mean, it's a great, venue. But I think the major problem is the fact that as soon as you ask people to pay to enter a tournament, there are perceived stakes. Even if it's like $5 and there's like nothing really on the line, people will literally think to themselves, like, I don't want to drive across town and pay $5 to play in a bracket, lose twice, and then sit around for like the next hour and a half, 2 hours just waiting for casuals to start. And then when casuals start, half the people leave because they just wanted to play in the tournament, right? So I feel like we have to reframe the way that we organize our weekly events to be like get-togethers, right? Because if it's just like a, wherever FGC social, then there's no pressure towards coming out. And I feel like people would be much more ready to come out, pay, a $10 venue fee, and then just be able to play casuals the entire night, interact with people, if there's a strong player there, hey, can you watch my replay? Yeah, no, I'll watch it. Get some advice, get some pointers, talk about controllers. I just installed these buttons. Why'd you do that? The response time, I think, is better. Or, I just like the way they feel. Well, yeah, okay, maybe I'll try that out. There's just a much more to gain and much less to lose when it is an environment without stakes, effectively. And this isn't to imply that you can't run tournaments. Obviously, I think tournaments are a really big appeal for us. But I just think that they shouldn't be the selling point. It shouldn't be like, come out to our weekly tournament every Friday. It should be like, come out to the social. We'll have a little bracket there, but we'll have setups on the side if you want to just hang out and play, have some drinks, whatever you want to do. Now, if we're talking about Twitch viewership, like why are fighting game streams less viewed than MOBA streams, strategy game streams, whatever? The reason is because there are no stakes, effectively, is the way to put it. So the most successful categories on Twitch are categories that have, how do I phrase this? Basically, they have like contained stories that somebody can sit there and watch, right? So for example, a League of Legends game is going to last about 40 minutes and it has a start. Some things can happen. Those things influence the middle. Some more things happen. And then those things draw to a conclusion towards the end. The fact that it's 40 minutes and could be broken out into these different segments allows an audience member to get invested in whatever the quote-unquote story of this match is and to sit around and wait to get some sort of emotional payoff off of it, right? A fighting game, just a quick match, is so short that there is no time to get emotionally invested, and the structure of having individual rounds means that there isn't a ton of influence from what's happened early on in the match that influences later on in the match, especially not to somebody who is not so ingrained into the fighting game that they can observe the sort of adaptations that players are making. And so it makes it very, very difficult for somebody who is not super engaged and super well integrated into that community to be able to get any kind of emotional payout from the stream itself. And so what we as content creators would need to do is we would need to set up these types of systems that elongate the emotional payoff and offer some kind of stakes to it, right? So like a successful stream might be something like, I'm going to play 20 matches. For every match I lose, at the end of that 20 matches, I'm going to do 10 push-ups. So, if somebody's here and they watch me lose 20 matches in a row, that's 200 push-ups. Like, that sucks. That's enough for somebody to get emotionally interested. I think some other content creators that are like in very well-off positions might like bet money on stakes like this or what have you. But just having stakes and being able to prolong the sort of emotional payoff is something that would be necessary, but is also kind of hard to do, and I think that's why people don't do it. I think people might be quick to point out that it was more exciting back in the day to tune in and watch majors, to watch even locals and what have you, and that we didn't need to do all of this extra like hard work to get people engaged. And like to a degree, they're kind of right. Earlier on, at least like in 2009, when I was starting to get integrated with the fighting game community, there was a lot of this kind of like almost like wrestling style heel versus babyface mentality going on. There's these guys and they're villains. They talk a lot of shit. And there's these guys and they're humble. Those are the good guys. We want the humble guys to beat the villains, right? The problem with this era is that like, yes, it's pretty entertaining if we like forget that these are people that are all living their life somewhere. But like, an important element of professional wrestling is consent. We're all out there performing with each other, not against each other. And we all, to some degree, have an understanding of what's going to be said, what spots we're going to go through. And it's all, you know, the heel is on the side of the babyface. The point of that character is to get the babyface over. So when we try to do those, and it's just John and Larry, John is just being a dickhead to Larry. Larry hasn't consented to this at all. Like, it's just somebody who's being rude and nasty to him. And that's just not, like, hospitable environment that we can condone and allow to exist. So, ironically, I think the idea isn't to, like, take all of the fun and flair and trash talk out of the fighting game community, because, I mean, I enjoyed watching that shit too. I'm just going to be honest with you. But we have to make it less like professional wrestling and make it more like professional wrestling, where if we're gonna talk shit, we should at least like have a conversation backstage first. We're like both on board, right? We both know what's being said, and we can like have fun with it rather than just be fucking mean to one another, right? I think that there's a lot of room for making exciting and engaging content and for highlighting the spirit and the fun that we can have as a fighting game community. I think that it just requires a lot of intention and a lot of attention to detail and a lot of communication between people to make sure that we're all above board and doing it properly. And I think a lot of people just don't want to do all that shit. And I think so long as we're in this mentality of, you know, I'm just going to hop on and I'm going to stream ranked matches over and over and over again, and then if people don't show up, I'm going to complain about it. I think it's going to be it's going to be nigh impossible to actually like get more eyes onto our community like that. So that's how I feel about it. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one, all right? Peace.